Hi, I'm back. This video is going to be about bloodline and blood types. So if you do your research and you go on, whether it's online or YouTube, you'll find a wealth of information about blood types more particularly, but also bloodlines. And oftentimes people will say, when you know your blood type, you have some specific powers for this blood type. You have to eat a certain way. You have to do this. You have to do that. You can't do this. You can't do that. My take on this is this: your blood type is is very recent. Okay, it's the information. It's a new classification as opposed to bloodline. If you take any sacred book, whether it is the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, whichever book you'll take, there's always some type of dynasty where they give you names of the father of this, and then the son of whoever, a bloodline. So the bloodline is much more important than your blood typing, I will say. And I think because in the future, I'm sure you'll hear about new blood types and all kind of stuff going on, because it's so much mixing, and the classification is actually independent of what is actually going on. Classification for blood types, if you go see, is going to depend on the medical academy, the scientific academies that decide what are the blood types, and that decide on the classifications, that decide to add subsection of classifications or do whatever they want to do, and classify you however they want to classify when you get to the hospital or any type of institution that deal with that. Your bloodline, however, is a part, I guess, that can give you much more information and control about who you are and what you can be. And the difference is also is that with the blood type is basically when you're born, on your birth certificate or your hospital records or whatever, they will assign you a blood type. I'm not going to be arguing about which blood type you are, what it represents, or how they classify you. And then I think they have so much video on the science part of the justification of why they call a certain blood type what it is and how they classify it, so you can get information on that. What I'm saying is that independent of that, or how you've been classified, whatever is written on your birth certificate, your bloodline is going to be much more important, because it's going to have an indirect influence in you, and there does not need to be some type of classification or anything like that. And it doesn't matter if you've been adopted, your parents abandoned you, or you don't know your heritage, you don't know your background. What is going to matter is the actual DNA that you have, and the DNA you get in touch with, in contact with. That's going to be having an impact on your ability to do certain things and your limits and stuff like that. So also always remember that when you're talking about blood types, I think this is a subject that is not being talked about much. I haven't found any videos discussing this, the influence of blood transfusion on blood type. What happens when you're getting transfusion from somebody else's blood, even though they're the same type as you, even though they're the same type as you, it's not the same DNA, it's not the same classification, it's not the same type of information. And this is why you get into the mixing of different bloodlines. They can be the same quote-unquote types, but the information is going to be different, and you may react different based on that information. So you can go to the hospital and someone say, you get a blood transfusion, everything is perfect, and now they let you go. And then you start having all this kind of mixture and problems and troubles, energical, changes that have nothing to do with the scientific fact of the transfusion, but that have to deal with all of the information that were included in that blood transfusion that you received. And it's very important that you just learn how to deal with different energies and how to not let them overpower you, whether it's through blood transfusion or whether when you enter in contact with someone else's DNA in whatever circumstances it may be. And I think my next video will be on cutting cords and the importance of DNA, or using DNA to your advantage, using those cords, and things to think about before you cut cords. But anyways, go back to bloodline versus blood types. So the reason why I'm saying this is because for me, for example, I had many people tell me, ask me about my blood type, and then after that say, oh wow, now I understand. A lot of them have been Chinese people that have told me that I was charismatic and that my blood type somehow validated or confirmed that for them. For me personally, I say that knowing the line of healers that I come from, the line of very powerful magical women that I come from, it's not a surprise. When I was younger, I used to be kind of surprised when people will tell me, oh, you have a certain energy to you, or I can see you as becoming a leader or having some type of leadership role in whatever you're going to be doing, which actually manifests in whatever it was in college or in law school and things like that. I always been in position of leadership, and to me that has much more to do with my blood type. That has much more to do with how women that came before me, the type of information they gave me in my DNA, the type of blood I have running through my veins. And in my tradition, there are two things to honoring your ancestors. It's like, of course, you have the blood because you are your own ancestors. You have the DNA. You are supposed to be improving that DNA. You are supposed to be adding information to it or remembering as much information as you can from your DNA and your blood. And then you have the name. And in our tradition, your name is not some stuff you take a book or you look on the internet and you say, oh, this name sounds good. Or if our name are predetermined, basically based on the ancestor that is supposed to come back, the ancestor that we want to honor by giving your name. You don't just pick out any random names. Now, we do have now what we call first names, which in my tradition, you only have one name, which is the name that you go by. Now, because of Western influence on Africa and the country I'm coming from, people were kind of forced to start using first name, and the first name doesn't have much importance. You can pick whatever name you want. It's going to have some type of influence on you, but the influence is not going to be as major as your sacred name, your ancestor's name. And if you go if you move to the city, people will call you by your first name, but when you go back and you see your grandparents or your village or sacred places, people are only going to call you by your sacred name. And every time you say the sacred name is actually honoring your ancestors. So the bloodline has a major impact on your life, in the sense that you're being given the name of an ancestor, you're being given also the DNA information that you carry within you. And those two are going to be influencing your life. And I say influencing because they are not going to determine who you're going to be or what kind of power you're going to have. You're still going to have your own free will to decide if it's a path you want to take, if you want to do a 180-degree turnaround, or if you want to change path. It's limitless, basically, what you can do. But that information, you can use it to your own advantage. And that information is going to have that can propulse you if you want to go further in the same direction that your ancestors went. So it's your choice, and you just need to be aware that you have that pack of information, that pack of knowledge that's just waiting for you to remember it and to use it to your advantage if you desire to. I think a lot of people, especially in America, especially Black people in America, will think that because they don't know their ancestors or they don't have a clear idea of where they're coming from in Africa, that this kind of information is not accessible to them. But the truth is, because it is in your bloodline, it is in your DNA, and you have access to it. I think there's a lot more and more videos about meditation in the Black community that are being offered, so that you can meditate to find out which country you come from. You can meditate to find out which culture you come from if you want to know that information. Ultimately, I wouldn't stress that knowing a particular culture if you don't have, if you don't know what country your ancestors came from. I wouldn't stress that necessarily knowing a particular culture is going to help you that much, because whatever information you have in your DNA, no matter what culture it's coming from, is going to be able to help you. So one of the advice I will give is that when you do your meditation, you ask that question, you focus on that question, and you kind of let yourself go to see where this question, this thinking is taking you. And just be open to whatever information you're going to get. And if you just starting meditation, it may take you a while to kind of move into that direction, to start getting answers. So you may have to meditate several times in order to start to begin to know where you actually come from. And of course, you can go, some people go beyond the eteric nationality and go even to find out their cosmic DNA, cosmic family. Personally, that is not something I've researched. It's not something at this point I felt like I needed to know. But I do know, however, that through meditation I can get that information if that's something I'm seeking. Another exercise that you can take if you want to find out what is your blood type or what is your ancestry and know more about them is basically to do to ask yourself that before you sleep, to use dream work to get that information. I often use the term petition paper, which I've borrowed from the voodoo tradition and other medical tradition that use that term. And for me, it's a term I'm going to be using, but I use it very loosely. I'm not talking about using some parchment or stuff like that. I'm just saying basically doing a petition to yourself. Or you can be doing that petition to the universe, to whoever God you're working with or believe in. And simple as that, you just take a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be any specific piece of paper. It doesn't have to be cut in any kind of shape or form or anything like that. It could be some craft paper, some leftover paper. It does have to be a blank paper where there's nothing else written on it or printed on it. And then you just ask a question as basic as, I want to know who were my ancestors. I want to know what African country I come from. I want to know what culture I come from, because one of the mistakes that a lot of people make is that they do one of those DNA tests that tell them, oh, your DNA is really close to the people living in South Africa in this whatever tribe, or from these people in Nigeria in the Yoruba tribe. However, that does not say anything about the culture. There are plenty of people who travel all different places. Even within Africa, there's a lot of mixture. People marrying outside of the tribe, outside of the country, outside of their religious belief system. So it's much more important for you to ask what was the tradition of your ancestor, what was the culture of your ancestor, because you may, through that, get the ethnicity, you may get some rituals, you may get some of their belief system, rather than some blank country that has thousands of people, or people who have a certain nationality but practice things that are completely different from that which is in your DNA. And so just there's some things to think about when you do your petition paper on your ancestry background. Just be very specific to say that you want to know more about the culture, more about the tradition. If you you can even be as specific as saying you want to know who was your great-grandmother. And so when you're ready to go to sleep, you write that petition paper, you put it under your pillow. You can add crystals, but because this is like just a basic exercise, it's better not to add anything else, and just not to bring any type of other energy, especially if you're not if you don't do dream work often, if you're new to this. I will tell you, just use the paper alone. Write the question, put it under your pillow, and sleep on it. It may take up to 3 days, depending on how you're focusing and how open you are with your dreams and how much energy you have to actually remember your dreams. And if you do not remember your dreams, it may be a whole array of factors. It may be because you're eating too late and you don't have the energy. All your energy is going to your stomach when you're sleeping, and that basically shuts down part of the power. You don't have enough power to kind of remember everything and absorb everything to be able to process it when you're awake. So you may want to try to stop eating at least 4 or 6 hours. Some people would recommend not eating before the sun has set. But to me, I think 4 hours, if you're having this kind of issue, usually 4 hours is fine, or 3 hours, or not to eat anything heavy. So if you're a meat eater, try not to eat meat 4 or 5 hours, also even more, before going to sleep. Try to drink a green smoothie before you sleep. Try to do everything that will help you relax and be focused. Taking a nice bath, salt bath, relaxing before you a massage, maybe, you know, putting on some incense or some oils before going to sleep, so you get kind of in the mood, in the atmosphere, and then you go to sleep. And then if you have to have some type of like if you don't have a dream journal or any type of journal or some paper and a pen on your bedside, so that if you wake up in the middle of the night and you remember something, you can just drag it down. You some people have the methods where you write it down, you crush it, and then you throw it somewhere in your room, and so that, and say, you know, you want to remember it. And because I don't personally use that method, because writing them down is enough for me. I usually write them down, and then if I see the time, I will write the time that I woke up to write the dream. But the good thing with this method of throwing the paper down is that, like, by the time morning comes around, you can know how many different dreams you've had. So that's important, especially when you are starting. Okay, so that was another way to kind of use your dream to access information about your blood types. And you can be as specific as you want, and you can use this as make a series of questions for, you know, every time you get the answer to a question, you can write another petition paper and get other answers on different other things. Now, after in the morning, if you get your answer, in the morning, you just take out the petition paper, you can throw it away. There's no specific rituals. You don't need to go burn it, or you don't need to go bury it or anything like that. I've used it several times without doing anything else. I just put it in the garbage. Or if you write it with a pencil, you can just erase it and reuse the paper, which is, you know, if you like Mother Earth, you're gonna wanna not waste paper if you can, but you don't have to. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I just wanted to put this out there, because I see a lot of people talking about blood types and not really addressing the bloodlines. Another thing I'm going to go a little bit deeper is also the bloodlines. Oftentimes people they will say, oh, the royal bloodlines, oh, the bloodlines of this or that. But before you even go and worry about, you know, the bloodlines of the Illuminati or the bloodlines of the royal family, worry about your own bloodline. Where are you coming from? What is in your bloodline? Who was in your bloodline? And I think I think that a lot of African American in particular will say, you know, we are all kings and queens and whatever. It's like, but the truth is, if you go to the records in Egypt, not everybody was a king, not everybody was a queen. And the fact that you are not royalty per se does not demean you in any ways. You know, the scribes were as important as a pharaoh and whatever you. The priestess were also important. The priests and the priestesses, everybody had a role in society that was as much important as the one of the pharaoh or the king or the queen. And you just have to be open and realize that, you know, even in modern society, the garbage man is as much important as the president. Because if the garbage doesn't get taken out, everybody's going to have repercussion on that, more than if the president doesn't show up to work. So it's important to not demean people because they are coming from a certain bloodline, because you don't know what it means. If you watch or if you research anything that has to do with butlers or people who are servants, they are providing services, but they're also gaining a lot of information. And oftentimes that information enables their children to go much further and have much more wisdom sometimes than the people who are more, quote-unquote, wealthier than them. So don't ever, if you're calling yourself a king or a queen in order to get some self-esteem or anything like that, to me, I think that's not necessary. You don't have to be a queen or a king to have self-esteem, to have power, or to know how to do things, or to have or gain influence. And this we can see a lot with king and queen coming to see astrologers, coming to see all kind of spiritual guide and spiritual advisors who are actually giving the information to the king and the queen. So those are the people who actually have the power, because the king and the queen are going to listen to them. So when you decide you want to call yourself a king or a queen, just be sure of the reason why you're doing that. Because another person that's not calling themselves that can have much more power if it's power that you're seeking. And of course, if you do have royalty in your bloodline, there will be ways for you to honor them. And I think this is where the bloodline comes in. When you're royalty, you will be put in position of leadership. You will have opportunities to take leaderships, and that will come naturally. You won't have to do or make too much effort in that. And this is kind of how you will know that it is in your blood. And you know, people will come asking things to you naturally. You won't have to advertise, you won't have to seek them out, they will come to you. The same way a citizen is seeking the president or is seeking the king, he's never met them before, but then he knows where they are. And that's going to be the same thing for you. If you do have royalty in your bloodline, if you do have that kind of leadership in your blood, people will seek you after. The people, your kingdom, people who are in your kingdom will seek you out. And so you won't even need to give yourself this kind of title. This title will be given to you. Like my other video, I was saying like how someone sent me an email from work, from a regular corporate mainstream thing, and call me a goddess. I don't affirm myself to be a goddess. I certainly don't do that at work or anything where any places else. But this is not the first time that I've been recognized as a goddess, as a leader, and stuff like that. That people come to me. I don't have to make advertisement in that way, or I don't have to present myself in a particular way. But these people will recognize you. It's all about energy and what energy recognizes other energies. So. Just my 2 cents on that dialogue. I hope it will help you. It's really dear to me to see that there are a lot of brothers and sisters that are looking and searching for their own path, and I hope that they will dive into themselves to know who they are. A DNA test is never going to give you the answer that you're seeking in terms of culture, instead of who you are, what your purpose is, where you come from. But meditation and other self-exploratory tools will help you have the answers to all of these questions and even more. And the same way, your bloodline only provides you information, and I will even say as far as going that some experience as well. Dream work is a very powerful tool to unleash that information and to even experiment with the information given to you in that realm. But that will be part of another video. But I hope you like it, and I hope you do think about your bloodline. Do think about what action you're taking, what kind of thoughts you have, what kind of legacy you're going to be transferring to your children through your DNA. That's also very important. Another thing is that are there any family members, are there any relationship or anybody in your bloodline close to you that you would like to redeem? Because you can also do that and clear and detoxify your blood by your own action, using herbs, using different foods to purify your blood. And there are also a bunch of rituals you can do in order to, get rid of certain curses, redeem some ancestors and stuff like that. So those are just food for thought, and I hope you do recognize the power of your bloodline, and that you don't focus too much on your blood type. Because whatever information you need, you already have it. It's just a matter of remembering and learning how to use it to your advantage. So thank you, and see you in the next video.